Greetings and salutations. Today we'll be covering the Koh Tao murders. Thailand is one of the world's most popular tourist destinations, with an approximate 35 million visitors each year. This country promotes itself as the land of smiles, and within this country there lies Koh Tao, also known as Turtle Island, which is a part of the Shompen archipelago on the western shore of the Gulf of Thailand. Koh Tao lies just off the coast of Thailand and is also more commonly referred to as Death Island. Death Island is a small paradise-like island being just off the coast of Thailand, provides it with idyllic weather and beautiful vistas. However, despite its beautiful scenery and how popular it is due to having a reputation as a premier diving destination, receiving around 500,000 visitors each year, Koh Tao has gained some notoriety for a series of mysterious deaths and disappearances, with at least 11 of them being European tourists, all of whom had died or disappeared under questionable circumstances, and whose cases were handled in less than ideal ways. These disappearances date back to 2014. Even though the island itself measures a mere 8 square miles, investigations digging into the incident have yielded inconclusive results, and rumors are abound about foul play, potential dangers lurking just beneath the shadows of the idyllic surface painted by the tropical paradise. Despite the unsettling events, many adventurers and tourists flock to Koh Tao to experience the unique blend of beauty and adventure along with the mystery of the island. However, it must be noted that at this point, even amongst some natives, Koh Tao has taken on a much more sinister reputation than that of its past. Starting from the top, 25-year-old Nick Pearson was on vacation with his family over the Christmas and New Year's time period. It must be noted that this was not Nick's first trip to Thailand, but rather his 7th, and the one that would end in his death. His family had gone to a bar and grill, and afterwards, they had made their way to Sairee Beach for New Year's celebrations, which culminated in a fireworks display. Not long after the celebration had ended, it was decided that they had to go back to their rooms. It must be noted that his father aided Nick into bed before leaving him and making his way back to his and his wife's own cabin. The parents of the 25-year-old woke up the following morning and found neither hide nor hair of their son. There was absolutely no trace of him, and this continued for the remainder of the day before the hotel staff would contact the now worried parents to tell them that their boy had been found. However, unfortunately, he had been found floating in an island bay. It was claimed that after a 50-foot drop, he was found by scuba divers, and it was claimed that he had gone missing the night before. However, his family, knowing he was found on a beach at the Hillside Resort on Koh Tao, January 2014, were somewhat suspicious of this. They would then proceed to seek contact with the authorities. Said authorities were rather insistent on quickly closing the case, claiming that since the body was found in the bay, they would just have to assume he had fallen in and drowned. However, after viewing their son's body, the parents started to suspect there was some amount of malfeasance afoot. The parents would note that the body had a large cut on his head, and they also noted that despite supposedly drowning, he had dried blood all over his face. And while police quickly ruled out foul play, Nick's family would be rather insistent on saying that the officers just did not want to investigate or question even a single witness. This led to his parents and many others believing Nick was murdered. One thing the parents would go on to point out was that before his death, Nick had started attempting to court a local Thai girl. They would go on to propose that potentially someone was aggravated by this and decided to act on said aggravation. It would be in the following week that the family would bring Nick's body back to England, where it would be examined once more, and the post-mortem report would go on to say that it appeared that the body could have been attacked before his death, rather than the injuries being strictly due to a fall. It was also pointed out that the body had absolutely no broken bones, which appeared to be rather strange for someone who had taken a 50-foot fall forwards, not to break anything. Unfortunately, no further investigations would be made into this case, at least through official channels. It is known that at this point, The Nick Pearson case will remain a cold case. It would be in September 2014 when two of the most notorious murders in the island's history would take place, propelling the now titular Death Island onto a global stage. Hannah Witheridge and David Miller, aged 23 and 24 respectively. Hannah and David Miller were last seen at a bar called Chipper Bar with friends partying, and they had arrived at 7 and 7:47 respectively. This is known due to CCTV footage, and soon after arriving, their friend groups would merge into a singular, much larger group. A short while after 12, CCTV footage showed Hannah heading towards another bar with her friends, to which David would follow shortly. And as their friends went on to report, they both called it quits well after 1 before they left together. The pair supposedly was heading up to Ocean View together. However, they would never reach their destination, and their bodies would be discovered on Sairee Beach a few hours later, between 4 and 5 a.m., by a mute Burmese beach cleaner. Miller's body was found floating in the water, and Witheridge's own body was found directly on the beach. The bodies lay approximately 30 meters from the hotel, specifically the Ocean View bungalows. The pair had been bludgeoned to death by a wooden hoe as they had walked back to their hotel room on September 15, 2014, and they were found at the popular Sairee Beach. Hannah was also partly undressed and she had been violated. The preceding police investigation was considered unbelievably unprofessional. They would not go even as far as to secure the crime scene, to the point passers-by would go up and continuously take pictures of the deceased. The crime scene was also contaminated by both tourists and locals, along with having no DNA samples or any real forensics conducted on the bodies long after their initial discovery. Then, even after the area had been supposedly secured, investigations have shown pictures that reveal random residents were pictured behind police tape well after it was supposedly secured. Due to concerns that the murders might affect foreign tourism into Thailand, the national authorities sought an expedited investigation. The police were under heavy pressure to produce any results. This seemed to affect how they went on to investigate the case proper. Police initially said they focused on foreign nationals, with a spokesperson even going as far as claiming Thais wouldn't do this. Now armed with this new heading, they would begin to investigate men who were spotted in the area around the time. This would lead some migrants who were questioned by officials, stating that the officials had scalded them with boiling water during interrogations. However, these allegations were denied by the police. After initially failing to match any of the migrant workers to the case, they were quick to pick out a British tourist who had shared a room with Miller as their perpetrator, believing the crime to have been a crime of passion. He became a subject of a nationwide manhunt before police quickly dropped this lead due to being incorrect. Police would eventually obtain CCTV footage of 3 men on a scooter headed to a 7-Eleven where they would buy beer and cigarettes before heading towards Sairee Beach. One of the men, Mao Mao, lived nearby. 2 weeks after the bodies were found, on October 1st, 2014, police would investigate Mao Mao, who would go on to say he took the motorcycle and separated from the other 2 men before the murders occurred. He took off on the motorcycle and separated from the other 2 men before the murders occurred, and found both of them home asleep by the time he had returned. Police entered the home the next day, only to find one of the 2 men, Zua Lin. Following an interrogation, the police say their captive had admitted he had entered the country illegally. Zua Lin was arrested, and his clothes and motorcycle were seized as evidence. The second man, Wai Phao, was believed to have left the island by boat. He was found hiding in a boat later on October 2nd. As it turns out, both men were illegal migrants from Myanmar who had worked in the hospitality industry and had no previous records. In an hours-long investigation, during which the police used Burmese food vendors as interpreters due to the pair they had captured not speaking Thai, the suspects supposedly confessed to the murders. It is claimed that they said that they were driven by the desire to violate the victim due to sexual arousal when they saw the couple kissing on the beach. The police said the suspect's DNA matched the sample of semen taken from the woman's corpse, and that the hoe and cigarette butts found near the body matched those that were owned by the pair. However, early police reports claimed that Miller's phone was found in Zua Lin's home. However, the media had previously reported that the phone had been handed to the police by a friend of the victim. In the trial, the prosecution would seem to contradict early police reports, along with media reports, by saying the phone had been found smashed at the home of a friend of Zua Lin's. The police publicly forced the suspects to reenact the murder, making it a show for media attention. This would later be condemned almost universally by legal experts who reviewed the case, as interfering with the possibility of a fair hearing. Unsurprisingly enough, Zua Lin and Wai Piao both retracted their statements following a visit from a lawyer from Myanmar, and they said that their statements were given under duress after they had been allegedly beaten and left naked in a freezing room, along with being threatened with electrocution and an extrajudicial killing. The prosecution's case focused on findings of the police and a medical examiner, with an emphasis on the DNA evidence. They argued that the defendants intended to kill Miller using the hoe to hit him multiple times over the head. The hoe was then used to knock the woman unconscious, after which the defendants used force to hold her down and took turns violating her before killing her with the hoe. It must be stressed that there were no eyewitnesses to the murders. The defense claimed that the investigation was flawed due to the mishandling of forensic evidence and the lack of legal representation during the interrogations. The use of threats, along with intimidation, also harming the case for the prosecution, and with the intimidation of any potential witnesses, due to the reenactment of the murder, which was forced by the police. They argued that the defendants were vulnerable as illegal migrant workers and were scapegoated by the police for this crime. The defense provided separate explanations for the events of the night. It was said that the pair went swimming on the same beach earlier that night, and when they got out of the water, they found their clothes to have disappeared. After unsuccessfully trying to find their possessions, they walked towards Mao Mao's house through a shortcut, which resulted in them being caught on the CCTV. They said Wai Piao found the mobile phone dropped on the beach, so he kept it. It is notable that Wai Piao had already changed jobs at the end of September and was traveling by boat to Surat Thani for his new job on the day he was arrested. The defense struggled to find members of the public willing to testify at the trial due to the police actions, as many feared retribution. Hence, their alibi would not be considered convincing by the court. The trial would later end in a conviction of the two men, who would be sentenced to death. However, during the trial occurred certain events which could potentially put the outcome and the prosecution's case into question. One of these was the death of a Swiss tourist who had gone missing from Sairee Beach. It seems that strange deaths are being tied to the beach. 10 days after he had gone missing, the body of the Swiss tourist, Hans Peter Suter, aged 44, was found washed up ashore at Talay Nang in the Lang Suan district of Champyon province on Tuesday, November 18, 2014. He had been found to have been dead at least 10 days and supposedly had left to go snorkeling alone on November 8th. Stewart had been a regular snorkeler and his death was considered unexplained. However, the autopsy stated that while he was supposedly a very experienced swimmer and in good health, he had just drowned. While the incident didn't immediately set off any alarm bells and could just be explained away by somebody drunk, getting overconfident, and drowning, another harder to wave away incident shortly followed. 1 week after the guilty verdict, yet another unusual incident had occurred. This death would happen in the early morning. The body of a Frenchman, Dmitry Pazev, aged 29, was found hanging from the beam at a residential house on January 1st, 2015. It must be noted that both his hands were tied behind his back. His friends claimed to have gone out with him the day prior, before returning to their own housing. The police would go on to claim that he had ended his own life, stating that he could have done this himself, as the rope was tied to one hand in a loop that made it so the other hand could be inserted. They would also state that they had found a suicide note at the scene, detailing his love for a particular woman. However, the woman Dmitry had been interested in said that he had called her twice on the phone that night, but she had not picked up due to having been asleep. His friends and family were extremely skeptical, even though they had been provided with a suicide note. They could not believe the claim, or even the idea that he would have gone on to take his own life. Then later that month, yet another loss of life would happen on the island. In January 21st, 2015, 23-year-old Christina Ainsley was found in a room, and according to the police, there were no signs of a struggle, or that Christina had been violated in any way, or that even traces of another human being or DNA were anywhere in the room. Authorities would claim that she had died of natural causes after mixing antibiotics, which she was taking for a chest infection, with alcohol. However, once again, no toxicology report was conducted, or any shred of real forensic analysis occurred. The Thai police supposedly also refused to interview or interrogate the last person to have seen Christina alive. This individual was identified on CCTV footage. After being confronted, police would refuse to release the surveillance footage. From there, the plot would thicken, due to it being revealed that the bungalow Christina had been staying at had belonged to the Twitchian family, a very wealthy family who was extremely influential on the island. The very same family who owned and managed the bar where David and Hannah had visited just prior to their deaths. Family and friends of this victim did not believe the chain of events as explained by the police. This is in part to the prolonged period of time which passed before the body was released to the UK authorities, which made an accurate post-mortem examination, including blood samples or DNA testing in general, to not be possible to any accurate degree. The family to this day has contested the police's version of events. They believe vehemently that the death was massaged away by the police, like all the preceding killings have been. And the deaths didn't just stop here. On February 16th, 2015, a Russian tourist, Valentina Novozayomba, aged 23, vanished from her hostel in Koh Tao. She checked into the hostel on February 11th and was due to check out on February 16th, but failed to do so. A few days later, staff checked her room only to discover her mobile phone and passport, along with her camera, had all been left. For some strange reason, many, if not almost all, the surveillance cameras in the area had some malfunction which caused them to stop working, or did not catch a glimpse of the young woman. However, there is some footage which was found. The footage showed the Russian woman walking to Hinkau Bay and never coming back. The police concluded that she had sporadically decided to break a deep diving record. In very short order, the island had once more become the epicenter of attention, due to another 5 deaths occurring on the island in a very short amount of time, just a few months. Now, all of this could be explained away. However, internet sleuths had noticed some particular patterns. To fully grasp the pattern, we have to go back, all the way back, to Hannah and David's death, and an important individual makes himself known. This is Sean McKenna, one of David's friends, who had joined the group while they were partying and hanging out. Following the murder, he would remain on the island. The night after his friend's death, he would try to drown his sorrows in the hard stuff. Now, his claim is that as he sat drinking his sorrows away, a boat owner along with 3 other men sat down around him and started to question him, asking what he knew about the guy who died, in reference to David. Due to his inebriated state, he openly answered their questions, after which they would proceed to ominously tell him that he was gonna hang himself and that they were gonna watch him hang. However, even in his inebriated state, he had enough wherewithal to run at the mention of his death. That night, well past 3, Sean would go on to post this specifically: "The Thai Mafia is trying to kill me. Please help." It must be noted that as he was talking to the men, he had discreetly taken pictures of them just before running away. What becomes even more curious, tying it to another case, is how they detailed he was going to hang. And supposedly, they had specified that he was going to hang in a way strongly resembling the way that Dmitri was found hung, or supposedly hung himself. And this web gets even more complicated when we look into one of the individuals who was supposedly at the bar, and one of the men who had made contact with Sean. He was a member of the very influential Twitchian family, or at least that is what some claim. However, the family vehemently denies this. The next death that seems to share a connection with these incidents was that of Luke Miller. On January 6th, 2016, a British bricklayer by the name of Luke Miller, aged 26, was found at the bottom of a swimming pool at the Sunset Bar at Sairee Beach. His family would go on to accuse the Thai police of being involved in a cover-up. This was due to the authorities having said he died after striking the diving board from which he was supposedly jumping. However, there have been reports contradicting this. Said reports mentioned hand-sized bruises found on Luke's shoulders. Authorities would go no further with this case, in essence, once more, sweeping it under the rug. In April of 2017, a Belgian backpacker by the name of Ellis Dalamange, aged 30, was found hanging from a tree. It was important to note that Ellis had been traveling around Asia for the last 2 years, and it is notable that before her death, she had been living at a yoga and tantric retreat. Phone records would go on to show that Ellis called her mother on Skype on April 17, 2017, and she would go on to tell her mother what she intended to do before leaving Koh Tao on a ferry on April 19th. Investigators would admit that they had no reasonable way to explain her unexpected stopover in Koh Tao on her way back to the mainland. Her mother would shed some light onto the situation when she claimed Ellis used a fake name of Ellis Dubois to check into the Triple B bungalows. Now, what happened next would be that an unexpected fire would break out and burn down 3 bamboo huts, including the one that Ellis had been staying in. Ellis would then go on to trudge 1.5 miles through the jungle to Tanat Bay and book a room at the Poseidon Resort, where she would book another ticket for Bangkok, leaving on April 24th. Now here is where another part of the strangeness occurs. While her bags were on the boat and made it all the way to the mainland, Ellis would be another story altogether. 8 days later, the locals living near Tanat Bay would find Ellis's body after becoming suspicious of a monitor lizard going back and forth into the jungle. They would go on to follow the animal only to discover the frightening sight it had been feeding on Ellis's remains, which had been found partly amongst the rocks behind Tanat Family Bay Resort. The body had deteriorated to the point that it had to be identified using dental records and previous x-rays. Conversely, Surat Thani Governor Ayuchi Inca dismissed this as untrue, to which some foreign news reports would claim that reptiles had eaten half of the girl's body. Polmajen, the director of the Institute of Forensic Science at the Police General Hospital in Bangkok, would go on to say that the wounds around her neck were solely due to the hanging, and that there were some non-fatal bruising on her head, along with there being no drugs found in her body. The police lieutenant general and acting police chief of Region 8 said, in the Dalamange case, the cause of death was suffocation, and that there were no signs of fighting or a struggle, nor were there any signs of a foreign object or substance that could cause the loss of consciousness found in the body. Authorities would quickly go on to state that this was a suicide. Once again, the crime was swept under the rug. However, Ellis's mother, Michelle, stated vehemently that she does not believe the Thai police versions of events. This was amidst the fears of authorities working to suppress speculation about many murders on the island, not just the ones of European travelers, adding to the fact that her luggage had made it on board the ship, yet supposedly she had suddenly decided to kill herself, leaving it and running into the jungle, makes the police story appear somewhat implausible, and that is without taking into account the fact that near the resort, deep in the jungle, right by the victim, was found an empty fuel container wrapped in an old cloth, much like the ones that would be used for a Molotov, the type that could be used to burn a few bungalows. However, the most suspicious part of it all was the fact that she was cremated before she could be repatriated back to her home country, where a more thorough analysis and investigation could be conducted. The next life that the island would claim, which was in some way connected to the others as an unusual death, was that of Alexander Buxbun, a 33-year-old man from Moldova, who was found dead on the sea off Had Sairee on Koh Tao, Tuesday, October 9th, 2018. Police recovered his body and took it to the neighboring island of Koh Phangan. Here, they would state that it was their belief that he had accidentally drowned and that they believed that he had been dead for 12 hours when his body was retrieved. However, witnesses would go on to state that items belonging to the Moldovan man were seen in the early hours of Tuesday morning, and the police would be alerted to this. Aaron Calwaclan, a security guard from Big Blue Diving Shop, told police he had found a mobile phone, clothing, and a hotel key, along with shoes and an ID on the beach at 1:30 during a beach patrol. The items were supposedly still there at 3 a.m., and it was then that he had called the police. There were apparently no signs of a robbery or attack in the hotel room where Alexander had been staying. The police would quickly close the inquiry, stating that he had drowned while swimming due to heart failure. However, it must be noted that this is somewhat suspicious due to him being both fit and healthy, to the point that when police reported his death was due to heart failure, red flags were raised by all those who knew him. Unfortunately, no further information would be released, and an autopsy would never be handed over to his family. The next death that would occur were some of, if not the most high profile to happen. These occurred on June 2021. The deaths of Rekeshwa Samataniko and his wife Ashu, both being 59 and 55 respectively, were found lying at the bottom of a pool. Their bodies would be quickly exhumed from the deep end, and despite all attempts to resuscitate the pair, it was too late. The Thai Indian millionaire couple were said to have died at the scene. The police would go on to state that there were no apparent signs of foul play. However, mysteriously enough, once again, all the CCTV equipment that covers the resort's pool area supposedly stopped working, in a way reminiscent to the events that occurred during the death of the young Russian woman. With no witnesses, authorities would claim that drowning was the cause of death. They said that they believed that one spouse had started drowning in the pool and the other had come to help before they too started to drown. And the deaths would not stop there, continuing on even in 2023, with the strange death mentioned in the Examiner, that of 48-year-old Neil Giblin, who was a well-known diving instructor, who for some strange reason, police seemed rather rush in ending the investigation into his death. It must be noted that post-mortem examinations on Koh Tao must be ordered by the police in circumstances which they deem suspicious, and these autopsies can take up to 2 weeks to perform due to the bodies of the deceased having to be transported to the Police General Hospital in Bangkok. However, Mr. Giblin's friend on the island stated that he had been told that the police were satisfied and that there was no need to investigate the death any further, well before an examination could even be considered. He also noted that emergency responders at the scene had told him he should not raise any questions concerning the death of the diving instructor. He seemed to have been met with the same response by many other islanders, and he would state, referring to what he had been told by one of the first responders, "He informed me that I shouldn't be bringing up that subject around here, as everyone else does when I do. This doesn't make any sense to me at all. No one is willing to challenge the police's account," the friend explained. This has suddenly reignited interest in Thailand's infamous Death Island. Now we have to consider that while many of the deaths were mired in some amount of mystery, along with several others that were not specified due to having either tenuous connections to this specific series of deaths, or information on them being unclear at best and unverifiable at worst. And while yes, it is hard to believe that they were all coincidences which had elicited an almost identical response from the police at every turn, it must be noted that when compared to the amount of tourists coming in and out of the island at any one time, that these deaths can be seen and written off as a statistical blip. However, in recent years, interviews with individual Thai residents has shown a large percentage of them had to pass bribes to the police to get anything done. There is the possibility that all these were accidents or self-inflicted deaths. What really calls attention to this case is how quickly the police seem to attempt to sweep these incidents under the rug, calling attention to what is going on in the island, along with the investigative practices of the local authorities. Unfortunately, unless something changes, it will remain difficult to ever be able to find any definitive answers, regardless of what theories may be abound. If you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do hope you stay tuned and subscribe for more content.